One band, 5 voices, and today it's all about Joey Fatone, the showman, the entertainer, and the guy whose 2001 was packed with surprises. Music, movies, fatherhood. It was a whirlwind year, and we're breaking it all down right now in 3 films and a baby. I'm your host, Nicole Raposo, and welcome to Unsynchronized, a deep dive show exploring how NSYNC became out of sync and eventually called it quits. Joey Fatone's 2001 wasn't just about stadiums and sold-out shows. It was about balancing fame with real life, stepping out in front of the camera, and getting a taste of Hollywood outside of the boy band bubble. Here we go. The year began with a mix of whispers and spectacle. At the People's Choice Awards, NSYNC walked away with the trophy for Favorite Musical Group, a reminder that their professional momentum was still undeniable at that point. Their polished appearance on stage was the headline, but the chatter in the press leaned elsewhere. Days earlier, Ted Casablanca's Awful Truth column floated the possibility of Joey becoming a father soon, giving the gossip its first bit of public footing. Casablanca was considered one of the more reputable gossip voices at the time, and his report ensured that the story would linger as the year unfolded. Joey's girlfriend, Kelly, was seen wearing a smock-style dress at the People's Choice Awards, which fueled speculation even more. The group didn't stop by the press room after the ceremony, leaving the rumor mill to spin without comment. The rumor didn't make its way to Larry King Live, but the group's January 9th interview touched on many topics: fame, friendships, and even whether they counted as a band since they didn't play any instruments. But when Larry King asked Joey if he ever thought about the group going away, his answer was telling. Joey admitted that the thought crossed his mind once in a while, wondering what he might be doing if NSYNC didn't exist. Yet he quickly pivoted to reassurance. As time goes on, I think that we're still going to be in sync, hopefully, obviously together as a group. That phrasing, hopefully, obviously, seemed very cautious to me, but it also seemed very intentional. It seems to me like Joey wanted the public to believe that the group's bond was lasting, even as speculation about the group's future was beginning to surface. Larry pushed things a bit further, asking, "Do you think you're going to have to evolve?" Joey didn't hesitate to answer, "Oh, of course, definitely." It seemed like a pragmatic acknowledgement that their sound and their image would need to change with time, but also a reminder that permanence for NSYNC didn't mean stagnation. The interview on Larry King Live also veered into some more personal territory, at least it did for Joey. He described how a woman had once appeared at his parents' doorstep claiming that he was the father of her 4-year-old daughter. The claim was not credible, but it added another layer of speculation around Joey's private life. The irony was actually pretty sharp. In January, Joey was publicly addressing a false paternity situation, but privately, he was only weeks away from becoming a father for real. But not all of Joey's contributions to the interview were defensive. His humor popped out in some of the lighter moments, including a playful aside about wanting to be Superman. It was something that reminded viewers that he wasn't just the group's spokesman for permanence. He was also kind of the comic relief and definitely the approachable member who could balance reassurance with levity. And taken together, I think Joey's comments painted a pretty multidimensional portrait. He was loyal to the group. He was realistic about the need for change. He was navigating intrusive rumors, but still able to joke and take a joke in the middle of serious questions. For fans watching in early 2001, his words were a promise of continuity for the group they loved. Later in the month, Joey had a birthday. He turned 24 the day he stepped onto one of the most visible stages in American culture. There's no candles, no quiet family gathering. Instead, this birthday was folded into the spectacle of the Super Bowl halftime show. Millions of viewers watched as NSYNC performed alongside Aerosmith, Britney Spears, Mary J. Blige, and Nelly. There was a lineup that just underscored how firmly the group sat at the center of pop music's mainstream. The halftime show capped a month that had already been crowded with gossip, awards, and public defense of the group's longevity. Joey's birthday performance just added another layer. It was proof that even though speculation swirled, NSYNC's cultural momentum was still at its peak. February brought a different kind of stage. According to fan-made sources, around the middle of the month, NSYNC taped their tribute for the MTV icon Janet Jackson special, which was their pre-recorded segment of them covering the song That's the Way Love Goes. It's definitely one of those cultural crossover moments. The reigning boy band of the era paying homage to a pop legend and situating themselves within a broader lineage of pop performers. Days later, the speculation about Joey's personal life gained more traction. On February 21st, Entertainment Tonight acknowledged the pregnancy rumors, moving the story from gossip columns to mainstream celebrity news. What started with Ted Casablanca's Awful Truth in early January was now being validated by a respected entertainment outlet. The coverage gave the rumors new weight, ensuring that they would follow Joey into the spring. February really underscored the duality of the position Joey was in at the time. He was a performer in the spotlight, a subject of speculation, and still, unconfirmed to the public, soon to become a father. March brought the biggest milestone in Joey's year. On the 21st, he became a father when Brianna was born, a moment that landed exactly 1 year after No Strings Attached was released. The symmetry was kind of striking. The album that cemented NSYNC's dominance was now paired, to the exact day, with Joey's entry into parenthood. But almost immediately, another commitment began for him. Filming for the movie On the Line started just days later. Joey took on the role of Rod, a wisecracking musician who was one of the protagonist's best friends. I guess that's art imitating life, right? In an interview on the Digital Get Down podcast, director Eric Bross recalls a 35-day shoot with Joey Fatone and Lance Bass coming and going, depending on which scenes they were needed for. Based on Eric's comments and also a journal entry from Melinda Bell saying that Lance had just wrapped the final movie scene around April 27th, I'm making an educated guess that filming started around March 22nd or 23rd. Bross also suggested that some of the group's album recording may have happened in Toronto studios, which sounds like a practical solution to avoid constant flights back and forth between Canada and Orlando in the US. I think Eric's memories of working on the film with Lance and Joey add more nuance and more context to the situation that Joey was in the early part of 2001, because he really had to balance his time between NSYNC and maintaining his obligations to the group with also fulfilling his obligations as far as filming the movie was concerned. So overall for Joey, March was really a balancing act. He was balancing new fatherhood, he was balancing film commitments, and ongoing preparation for the group's next album. And the juggling that was going on at the time was really something. From the delivery room, to being on set, to being in the studio, handling all these things simultaneously without dropping the ball. Rolling into April, Joey and Lance were still working on their movie, On the Line. On April 17th, Joey and Lance filmed a key scene for the movie at Wrigley Field in Chicago. They led the crowd in a rendition of Take Me Out to the Ball Game during the 7th inning stretch. The public shoot highlighted the film's visibility and scale, and it turned the baseball tradition into part of the overall spectacle of the movie. On April 18th, The Smoking Gun reported on Joey and Kelly's baby registries at JCPenney and Babies R Us. They praised the choices as being grounded and accessible, and thought that they drew a pretty big contrast with the group's stadium-scale visibility. But there was still some confusion about baby Brianna. Several news outlets inaccurately reported that she was going to be born in April, despite her actually having been born in March. One Canadian site, All Pop, even cited a fan's Angel Fire page as a source. Definitely a reminder of how different internet culture operated in 2001, when fan pages might be treated as legitimate references when writers couldn't find sources elsewhere. As previously mentioned, Joey and Lance were still filming On the Line early in April, and that means that they didn't appear with the rest of the group at the Blockbuster Music Awards. Their absence was, of course, a reflection of the strain of trying to balance group obligations with also film. But by April 25th, all 5 members of NSYNC were back together again, and they appeared on a special episode of TRL called TRL at Your House. And this was something that reinforced their united front, even as solo rumors continued to swirl. Early in May, MTV reported that NSYNC had pushed back both the start of their PopOdyssey Tour and the release of their next album, Celebrity. The album's release date was moved from June 26th to July 24th, while the tour's opening was rescheduled to May 23rd. As far as the tour goes, the delay reflected additional technical elements that were added to the show, putting NSYNC in the position of having to navigate staging features right up until they were ready to hit the road. Meanwhile, Joey's commitment stretched beyond the group. Media attention for On the Line was starting to pick up speed. All Pop published a piece that briefly described the film's plot but didn't mention Joey's specific role. Instead, the outlet framed On the Line as just one of several projects that Joey was involved in, noting his work on independent films like The Bros, where he played a victim of violence, and also on My Big Fat Greek Wedding, a film that he had a small part in and, at least according to All Pop, was scheduled for release later in the year. Their coverage underscored how Joey's profile was getting bigger. The 3 films that he was attached to were also 3 venues for more visibility for Joey, which would just expand his media presence as somebody who was already well known to the public as a member of NSYNC. On May 12th, Joey's resilience was tested. During rehearsals for the PopOdyssey Tour, his leg got caught in a stage mechanism, causing a serious injury that required stitches. Day 1 of the video shoot for the group's latest single, which was Pop, started on May 13th. And this is something confirmed by MTV's Making the Video special. Joey was in bed for the first day of filming, but he made his way onto set by day 2. Injured, but determined, Joey adapted his movements while the group's choreographer, Wade Robson, filled in for him doing full-body choreography for the wide shot scenes. And of course, MTV was right there to capture it all, making sure that they got plenty of Joey's tight shots doing the modified movements, upper body only, and basically underscoring his commitment to stay involved with the video process. On May 17th, NSYNC's road manager, Melinda Bell, reassured fans during an MSN chat that Joey was just fine. She said, his leg is a little sore, but he moves it every day. In the same web chat, she also addressed rumors that the group had solo contracts signed. Specifically, one participant said, "Rumor has it the guys have solo contracts signed. Is it true?" Bell replied, "No, not true. All the guys have solo projects that they work on. For example, Lance's movie. JC producing with other groups and artists. They all work on their own individual things when they can find the time." Her response seemed to be a careful balancing act, denying any formal solo record deals while acknowledging that each member pursued side projects when possible. For Joey, these side projects were increasingly visible, with film work becoming almost a parallel track to his commitments to NSYNC. By May 21st, outlets like NME reported Joey's injury publicly, but just 2 days later, on the 23rd, the PopOdyssey Tour officially launched, with Joey performing despite still being in recovery. Post-production for the music video Pop wrapped on May 28th, and the finished video debuted alongside MTV's Making the Video special on May 29th. So that was only 16 days after filming started for the video. After the intensity of May, June offered Joey a mix of quieter personal moments and also family connections. In early June, he was spotted attending a performance of The Music Man while in New York. And this is something that, once again, Ted Casablanca reported about in his gossip column. It was a small detail, but also telling. Just showed that even while keeping up with the demands of touring and still recovering from his injury, Joey carved out a little time for theater, reflecting his interest in performance beyond the pop stage. Fan accounts claimed Joey sightings at different nightclubs across Philadelphia, Chicago, and Los Angeles during the month. These reports highlight a pretty big contrast between his public image as a new father and his private life as a young pop star. And to round out the end of June, a big family moment happened for Joey. On the 30th, Joey's father, Joey Fatone Sr., joined the PopOdyssey Tour with his novelty act called the Not So Boy Band, and they were an opening act for NSYNC. The appearance really brought Joey's personal and professional worlds together on stage. It was a cute way to show the strong bond that he had with his family, and also to weave that bond more so into the NSYNC ecosystem. For fans, it was a reminder that Joey's identity was never just about celebrity. It was also about humor, heritage, and continuing performance traditions across generations. As June rolled into July, NSYNC was fully immersed in their PopOdyssey Tour. The production was a massive undertaking, and it really just cemented NSYNC's continuing reputation as the biggest live act in the world at the time. Joey's tireless work ethic reinforced his role as part of the reliable foundation of the group, and this continued all throughout the month. July wasn't all nonstop touring, though. On the 18th, Joey participated in MSN's Artist of the Month web chat. Once again, questions about solo projects popped up. One fan asked directly, "Do any of you have plans for solo projects?" Joey's response was brief but emphatic. "Not as far as solo singing. I know Chris did a track with Brian McKnight on his album. JC's producing. Everything comes back to NSYNC, though." There was a mistake on Joey's part. It was actually Justin who did the duet with Brian McKnight and not Chris. But still, at that moment, he reaffirmed loyalty to the group and underscored the group's collective identity. Joey also reflected candidly on his injury from May, admitting that the pop video shoot hadn't been fun. He said, "I hurt my leg and couldn't do much dancing, but the set was neat and it was a lot of fun." His resilience was evident, even as he acknowledged the limits imposed by his recovery. In the chat, he also gave fans insight into the Celebrity album rollout, explaining that the title came from the track Celebrity and the cover art poking fun at their fame. When asked about favorite songs, he highlighted Do Your Thing as upbeat and personally meaningful. He also talked about the hardest part of his day, which was usually juggling sound checks, press, meet and greets, and shows. And it gave fans a glimpse of the grind behind all of the glamour. When asked about the coolest celebrity he met, he answered Janet Jackson. It's a nice reminder that the relationship developed when NSYNC opened for her during the Velvet Rope Tour. The connection that was made wasn't just professional, it was also social. There were also some media features in July that added a bit more dimension to Joey's public image, although not all of it was good. In the August 2001 issue of Vibe magazine, which was on newsstands and sent to subscribers in July, Mimi Valdez wrote a piece defending NSYNC's R&B flavor on top of the pop music that they made. Even for the time, the piece was pretty questionable, but in retrospect, in my opinion, it seems even more cringeworthy. One standout quote from Joey in Valdez's write-up is, "I know if I was Black, I probably could sing 10 times better and riff a lot easier." He also contextualized his R&B inclinations by noting his roots in the 1950s doo-wop that his father used to sing. Both of these things showed an awareness of the racialized perceptions around NSYNC, particularly when it came to their vocal style, but it also showed the willingness to ground the group's sound in older vocal traditions. In the August issue of Rolling Stone, music journalist Torre did a profile for NSYNC. And in this piece, he painted Joey as generous, but his overall portrayal was flat compared to some of his bandmates. Torre touched on Joey's generosity with family, like buying cars for his parents and siblings, including surprising his sister Janine with a PT Cruiser when the family went out to dinner at Benihana. And this is something that reinforced his warmth, but it focused mostly on Joey's willingness to spend money when it came to his family and not so much the interpersonal connections. Another thing that stood out from the Rolling Stone write-up is Joey admitting that he would have loved to have been in a project like The Sopranos, but he was worried about how it would alienate younger fans and their parents. Joey also acknowledged his flirtatious reputation, but still emphasized faithfulness to his girlfriend and basically framed it as curiosity about people. The feature didn't have any additional quotes from Joey that expounded upon his curiosity, so that was basically the long and short of it. August brought another health setback for Joey, but fortunately, no stitches this time. On August 5th, he missed the San Antonio stop of the PopOdyssey Tour due to pneumonia. After he recovered, Joey was back at it, joining the group on tour again and also for other public appearances. On August 20th, NSYNC was part of the Today Show's summer concert series at Rockefeller Plaza in New York. This was a high-visibility performance that reassured fans and the public that Joey was on the mend and reliable as ever. The spotlight continued to follow NSYNC into September, when on the 6th, they performed Pop at the MTV Video Music Awards along with Michael Jackson. Just days later, the roles would be reversed, and NSYNC would be joining Michael and the rest of the Jacksons at his 30th anniversary performance at Madison Square Garden in New York. On September 10th, MTV aired Making the Video for On the Line, which featured Joey alongside Lance, Mandy Moore, BB Mac, and a group called True Vibe. The broadcast spotlighted Joey's role in promoting the soundtrack for On the Line and also gave fans a behind-the-scenes look at his crossover into film. With On the Line slated for release later in the month, Joey's dual commitments, touring and acting, showed the full breadth of his career at that time. The following day, the September 11th terrorist attacks happened, a national tragedy that reshaped our cultural landscape. While this episode focuses on Joey's career trajectory, it's important to note that NSYNC would later respond with a benefit concert in November supporting the relief efforts from the tragedy. In September, NSYNC's reach expanded further into interactive media. On the 17th, Infograms released the NSYNC Hotline Fantasy Phone CD-ROM game. This game featured mini-games, trivia, and exclusive audio and video clips. For Joey, it was another reminder that his image and voice were part of an ecosystem that stretched from stadium stages to home computers. On September 24th, IFC aired a crossover documentary with behind-the-scenes footage of On the Line, positioning Joey as part of NSYNC's effort to expand into film. The following day, Joey and Lance appeared on the Rosie O'Donnell Show to promote On the Line, with both of them fielding questions about how NSYNC songs were divided vocally. Joey explained, "It's really producers at times," while Lance elaborated that writers often had someone specific in mind, but the group would experiment with the sound. Sometimes Joey or Justin would try the lead to see what fit best. This exchange highlighted Joey's role in the creative process, showing that while he wasn't always the default lead, he was actively considered sometimes, and he was tested in that position. So overall, September closed out the third quarter of the year with Joey firmly back in the spotlight. He had been recognized for his resilience, admired for his aspirations, and still very visible across music, film, and multimedia. October marked Joey's most visible solo press window in late 2001. And this was because On the Line promotion placed him in the spotlight apart from the group. But before diving into the film's premiere and the continued press run from September, I'd like to make one clarification, because it's something that's been misreported in fan circles for a while now. On the Still NSYNC WordPress site, their January 2001 chronology listed Joey as appearing in a film called The Brothers, and they described it as a romantic comedy directed by Gary Hardwick and starring Morris Chestnut, D.L. Hughley, Bill Bellamy, and Shamar Moore. There's just one problem. Joey was not in that movie. Not as one of the leads, not as a side character, not even as an extra. The movie that Joey was actually in was a completely different independent film, and the working title was The Brothers. On October 6th, themoviereport.com published a transcript of a press junket where Joey mentioned the project. A question from one reporter was, "Can you talk a little about these two movies you have coming up?" Joey replied, "One is an independent. They changed the name. I don't know the exact name. It was The Brothers. I think they changed it because a movie came out called The Brothers. I play a real small role in that, really tiny. I play a liquor clerk that gets beat up. So that other film with the working title of The Brothers was eventually released in 2007 as The Bros. And in the movie, Joey played a cashier who got killed during a robbery." The movie itself was a low-budget urban comedy about two suburban white guys trying to break into gangsta rap. The confusion likely stemmed from early fan pages and possibly an IMDb listing that didn't distinguish between the two projects. But they're not the same. One was a studio-backed ensemble film with a theatrical release in 2001, and the other, the film that Joey was in, was a delayed indie project that sat in limbo for years before quietly being released on DVD. And, as a fun fact, both films are currently available to stream on Tubi if you're curious enough to watch and compare them side by side. Returning to the press junket, the comments about the independent film weren't Joey's only noteworthy statements. One of the first questions Joey was asked was, which do you enjoy more, performing with NSYNC or acting? He said both. They're both a lot of fun. It's cool because when you do the other one, it's an outlet. It's like a little vacation, if you will, because it's something different, and you're able to come back to NSYNC and work on songs. When asked about future singing opportunities, he replied, who knows? If the song is right and the producer wants me to sing that, sure, why not? It was weird because the movie gave me a chance to do different things and for people to be like, oh, he can really sing, as far as the ending song is concerned. But other ones, like Pour Some Sugar on Me, or the parody of Every Rose Has Its Thorn, those were fun things, though, because it was like you're at a bar and whatever came out, basically, when I was recording in the studio, that's what we used. It was just funny. It's not the greatest. When asked about writing for NSYNC's next album, Joey said, it's possible. We haven't written anything yet, honestly. We're just taking some time off. Obviously, I've been doing promotion with this. If I was completely off, maybe I would be writing something. But we have another tour coming up next year around April. It's a totally new tour. We're downsizing it from stadiums to arenas. It's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of the songs that we didn't do the last tour we're doing for this tour coming up. So it's going to be a whole new show. So overall, these comments highlight three things about Joey. His modesty about his acting, his openness to singing more if musical producers were open to it, and his acknowledgement that the group was on a little break at the time, but they had an upcoming arena tour in the following year. The idea of NSYNC being on a break at that time is interesting because, for what it's worth, it still seemed that they maintained public visibility. And that raises a question for me about what was meant by taking a break when it came to how NSYNC typically operated. Joey framed it as taking a break and then pivoting to a tour in the following year. So was a break for NSYNC actually time off? It doesn't seem that way. He was using his downtime to promote the film, but he wasn't off in the sense of having no media visibility or public work at all. A few days later, after the press junket, On the Line premiered on October 9th. Some of the pictures from the premiere ended up as exclusive content on a website called NSYNC Pagoda, and that was through the site's partnership with Miramax. The press week continued with other solo guest appearances, like Joey being a guest on The Late Late Show with Craig Kilborn, then appearing on Live with Regis and Kelly on October 12th, followed later by an appearance on The View on October 18th. That one was alongside Lance Bass. These media appearances highlighted the unique position that Joey was in at the time, becoming very visible as an individual entertainer, but still careful to frame his work as being complementary to his primary job and his primary duties with NSYNC. In November, the media spotlight had widened to refocus on the group. The biggest example of this was on November 11th, when thousands of fans flocked to Miami's South Beach for NSYNC's free Veterans Day concert. The concert wasn't only to honor veterans, though. It also benefited the families of the victims of the September 11th terrorist attacks, which just underscored one of NSYNC's many commitments to public service. Days later, in an interview with BBC's Radio 1, Joey was a little candid about the exhaustion that he seemed to feel, and possibly some of the other members of the group felt as well. He was quoted as saying, "Obviously, there are some times where all of us are like, hey, we need a break. We're going to have, hopefully, a little more time off, and then hopefully do some promotion in Europe. Then we'll be back on tour, I think. I want to say April of next year." Again, for me, this raises the question of what time off actually meant for NSYNC when they were an active group, because Joey describes them as wanting a little more time off, but they were still making multiple public appearances at the time. One such example is on November 20th, when NSYNC appeared on MTV's TRL. And then a day later, on the 21st, the group made their first appearance on BET's 106 in Park. That same day, Joey was welcomed at the Siegfried and Roy show in Las Vegas, placing him back in solo spotlight, even just for a brief glimpse. But overall, November captured the tension between Joey's continued visibility as part of NSYNC, but also his weariness. I think it serves as a reminder that even in moments of burnout, he was still expected to remain a public figure and show up, whether that was for charity, for entertainment, or for general media purposes. December closed the year with Joey firmly embedded in group activity. On the 4th, NSYNC performed together at the Billboard Music Awards. A few days later, on December 8th, Joey joined the rest of NSYNC in Orlando for a holiday charity event, handing out gifts to children as part of their nonprofit Challenge for the Children. The pace continued with MTV's TRL Christmas special on December 19th. Footage shows the group doing their best to maintain and spread holiday cheer, but there definitely seemed to be an undercurrent of visible fatigue. And then rounding out the month and the end of 2001, the premiere of the Girlfriend music video debuted on MTV on New Year's Eve, closing out yet another year with NSYNC prominently featured in the media. Something that's key to mention in December, though it hasn't been independently confirmed, is that in his memoir, Lance Bass recalled when he was in a hotel room listening to CDs with Joey, Justin came in and approached the two of them asking how they felt about taking a break. Again, I want to reiterate that this has never been independently confirmed, and that's as far as Joey is concerned or any of the other members of NSYNC. But like I mentioned in the introduction, I would be using Lance's memoir as one point of reference. And considering the number of times that the idea of a break came up for Joey in media interviews late in 2001, and specifically when he talked about fatigue to BBC's Radio 1, I do think that this is something worth mentioning. NSYNC was already taking some form of a break at that point in the year. And then there's the possible proposition of taking another more extended break sometime in 2002. The timeline that Joey hinted at multiple times in the media in late 2001, where the group would take a break and then resume touring the following April, seems to have gotten flipped around. So this disclosure from Lance's memoir presents one possible explanation of how that happened. How the group went from taking a break around the end of 2001 and then anticipating an arena tour in April of 2002 somehow flipped around to them touring in early 2002 and then taking a break at the end of April. Overall, Joey Fatone's 2001 trajectory revealed the full spectrum of what it meant to be both a reliable member of NSYNC and an individual carving out his own space. From spring's injury and resilience, through summer's relentless touring and media visibility, then into fall's surge in solo promotion, and then the year's closing stretch of group commitments. Joey showed up consistently, sometimes being candid about exhaustion, other times being playful, like in interviews, but always present. By the end of the year, his path reflected a balance between loyalty to the group, curiosity and exploring creative outlets, and also some of the strain of constant visibility. I think for this year, Joey's story gives us 3 critical takeaways. The first was that he proved a member of the group could successfully branch out without neglecting any of his primary obligations. Joey was fully present and performed through every major moment for NSYNC, from the People's Choice Awards to their tour to the VMAs, and even showing up for charity right at the end of the year. The second takeaway is that his loyalty to NSYNC seemed unwavering. Joey consistently framed his individual pursuits as something that was secondary to the group and never hesitated to remind the public that everything comes back to NSYNC. And the third takeaway is that it seems like Joey was operating under the assumption of mutual empathy and the assumption of being in tune with his fellow bandmates. I think it's something that came across in the Larry King interview when the question was posed about the group evolving, and Joey felt confident enough in their unity and their ability to say that he definitely thought they could rise to the occasion and evolve together as a group. I also think it came out later in the year when Joey talked about the prospective touring in April of 2002, and also in reference to the undercurrent of fatigue. He didn't just talk about things in terms of himself by saying that I'm tired and I want a break. It was framed as something that was mutual and something that was desired by every member of NSYNC. And I don't think Joey would make that kind of comment without feeling like everybody was mostly on the same page. Even when acknowledging exhaustion, he still framed the group's break, any break they might take, as something being temporary, and the return was implied as inevitable. So it seems that for him, loyalty didn't just mean showing up, but also aligning his own pace and his own sentiments with the group's calendar and the group's current. Next time on Unsynchronized, we'll be following Chris Kirkpatrick, the visual architect, the wild card, and the mastermind behind Fu Manskito. Chris spent 2001 navigating brand building, stage duty, and the quieter dynamics of being NSYNC's oldest member. His arc unfolds in episode 3. Until then, this has been Nicole Raposo. Thanks for joining me, and remember, you can't spell unsynchronized without NSYNC. Talk soon.